Welcome to the Head Guy Podcast, where insightful conversations unfold with thought leaders and professionals shaping the landscape of mental health. I'm your host, Stefan Lindberg-Jones, and today we're thrilled to have Tina Balachandran, a trailblazer in the field of mental health, as our distinguished guest. Join us as Tina shares her journey in establishing the Flourishing Minds Clinic in Qatar, breaking down barriers and advocating for a more inclusive and confidential approach to mental health. Get ready for an engaging dialogue on the challenges of setting up a clinic, the evolving mental health landscape in Qatar, and Tina's unique insights into holistic mental health treatment. This is the Head Guy Podcast, where we dive deep into the minds that are making a difference. So Tina, welcome.
Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you for coming on the podcast. I eventually got you on here.
Well, it's good to be here for sure.
So, how do I find you? Where, in regards to personal and business, where do I find you at this present time?
All right. So in terms of business, located at Flourishing Minds Clinic, we're located at Burj Marina Tower on the 8th floor in Lusail. And in terms of social media profiles, you'd find me on LinkedIn. I think that's where I'm most active. Struggle sometimes to maintain the other social media accounts. But we're there on Instagram as well, fm.clinic.qatar. No, fmclinic.qatar, sorry. And on LinkedIn as well, Flourishing Minds Clinic. And me individually, I'm engaged to flourish.
Okay, very good. Very good intro. So how's that journey been? How long has Flourishing Minds been going?
Right. So Flourishing Minds Clinic is relatively new. We're soon getting close to our 1-year anniversary. So we're excited about it, December.
Yeah. Is there going to be a party?
Well, we're definitely thinking about a newsletter, for sure.
Oh, careful, Tina. Don't go overboard now.
Well, I do have a tendency to do that, I must admit. I do kind of sometimes take in more than I can manage, but I'm excited about it. I think it's been a journey in so many different ways, both personally as well as professionally. Just the whole process of setting up the clinic took us almost over a year. We renewed the CR before we were officially licensed by the Ministry of Public Health to be operational as a clinic.
Okay.
So I think that was a milestone achievement. We did the happy dance when we got the license finally ready to, roll as an operational clinic as such. So It's been a very interesting journey. And I would say it also just allows you to reflect, and recognize that there is so much of potential in the market over here, and there is so much of a need for what we are doing.
Well, let's go into it. Explain what Flourishing Minds is all about.
Right. So Flourishing Minds is an outpatient community care clinic, and we cater to children, adolescents, adults, and we work very closely with couples, with schools, with universities and organizations. And the idea is really to break the stigma, create more awareness around mental health, to be able to make mental health services accessible. And in order to do that, it's not just about having a clinic and a space, but having an environment that the ambience, the practitioners, the whole setup of the place is built that it is non-clinical like. So when you come in, it's kind of like coming into a place where you could just sit across and you can talk to your practitioner. We've kind of taken away the traditional sitting across the table.
See, I haven't been to your place. You've been to mine a couple of times now. I haven't been to your place. So that's interesting because anytime that you go to a clinic, it's all very, off the shelf, very clinical, white, clean.
Well, you'd still see the white and the clean for sure.
I hope so. So it's, when you're talking about mental health, what was the process of actually building the right kind of clinic in regards to color and sensory, because that all plays into effect with people's mental health.
I think it was really important for us to be mindful that, we're dealing with people from diverse cultural backgrounds, dealing with various mental health challenges. There could be triggers in terms of smell, in terms of sound. So we really had to be very mindful about that.
Absolutely. So where do you how do you start? Where do you start?
I think it's when you walk into the clinic, what I've heard from all those who visited us, both clients and people like yourself who just, drop in, it's really about that welcoming environment that is there. We have a separate waiting area for males and females, which is part of regulatory requirements. But again, it's a comfortable seating. It's like couch and tables, and it looks nice. You should come and see it.
Yeah, I will.
And then all our consultation rooms are behind the reception, so there is further privacy over there. And the view from the rooms gives you the view of the ocean.
Oh, really?
So we're on the 8th floor, so we could see the
nice.
cell.
So if I'm talking to you, am I looking out the window?
You're looking out.
So that helps, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
For patients.
Absolutely, which means it's also in terms of, the distance, the personal space. I'm not right in your face, so you don't have to look at me.
So you are on the side.
Very much of an L shape.
Nice.
So, you can look away, you can look at me. It just gives you an open space to build that rapport, because I think that's the key part of the therapeutic relationship. So each of our rooms have a name. So Flourishing Minds. Minds is motivate, inspire, nurture, develop, and sustain. Mm-hmm. And so the rooms are also, it gives you that feel when you come in. The colors are exactly reflective of that as well.
Nice. And I'm just curious, is there, what do they call it, a chaise longue?
No, not yet.
Where you lie on? No?
Not yet.
So what am I sitting at? Am I sitting something like this?
Something like this.
Okay.
Yeah. When you come in as a couple, then you have the double couch. So you have the love seat.
Okay.
So, and then you'd sit.
Because it's very important that you don't have, I presume, I'm just saying things out loud, that you don't have things that distract you when you go into your mind or whatever. So you don't have various trinkets or objects around.
So each of the consultation rooms, again, the way we work is our practitioners rotate as well. Mm-hmm. So clients don't always have the same room because practitioners rotate. So clients also have a different experience of the rooms. Allows opportunities for reflection as well. Sometimes it's hard when you're in the same space. You prefer the same space. So just that movement and the shift also allows you to reflect.
Oh, I thought maybe that would kind of scare people if they're shifting.
We're very conscious and mindful of clients who might find that difficult. I remember working with a client, and we have one room which is a more closed room. So that's an additional room. We have certain other plans of bringing in, let's say, the TMS, which is transmagnetic, stimulation, which is also an evidence-based technique for treatment-resistant depression. And so we have a closed room that we've created, but that also currently is being used as a private area. So if someone wants to have a more private consultation, doesn't want to come in through the main entrance, we have the staff entrance, which gives them direct access to that private room. So I remember working with one of my clients, and the client said that, I don't really feel comfortable over here because it's completely closed. I don't have the view. Right. So clients, we check in with our clients quite often to see, how do you feel about it? Is there any challenges, anything that you want us to be more mindful about? So it's really working with our clients through the process. So if a client comes in and says that, this is something which I feel a bit uncomfortable about, we make sure we kind of factor that in. Again, we do have scents around. So, the perfumed I don't know what you call them, those decanters in which you have the sticks.
Oh, yes.
The aromizers, right? So, so we have a few of them around the clinic. And again, we had to kind of balance it out. So we have it in each room as well. But I've had a client come in to say that, it just smells too trinky.
Yeah.
And so we've moved that and made space accordingly for the client. So very much, very client-centered in how we work.
So just give me an insight. So when you've got a client coming, do you have like a overall thing about that client where if they are about smell, very sensitive, you adjust that before they arrive? How does it work?
Well, we might not always be able to do that because the client coming in for the first time,
you wouldn't know, but
right. But subsequently, absolutely, we then definitely make sure that that's kind of factored in.
Nice. I'm curious, why did it take so long to set the clinic up? What was it? And I'm just thinking aloud now. Is it because I'm not really aware of many mental health clinics here? Are you one of the first, or how?
At this point of time, we're the only mental health specialty clinic in Qatar.
So was that
private.
why, yeah? So was that why it took so long?
I would say probably yes, probably no.
Okay.
For multiple reasons. When you set up the business, there are so many different processes that you have to go through that as a business owner, you don't know all of this. You're getting into the market and you're kind of finding
So there
your
was
way.
no go-to.
So there is no go-to where you
blueprint.
have all the
Yeah.
information, right? So
you had to feel your way, and
there was a part of that process that we had to go through. Second was the licensing authority in terms of Ministry of Public Health. Their guidelines are very clear. So you have a clear guideline around that. However, in order to meet those guidelines, you need the facility set up. To get the facility set up, you require municipality approval. You require civil defense approval. You require all of the other approvals that comes along.
sounds like you're an expert.
I could start another consulting business just to help people set up a clinic.
So did you do it yourself, or did you have someone?
So with regard to the Ministry of Health, there are two processes. There's an initial licensing process and the final assessment. The initial process, I did it completely by myself.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was very, very straightforward, very clear process in terms of what was needed, and a very supportive facility licensing team within the Ministry of Public Health.
Nice.
So hats off to
Okay,
them.
so,
That
yeah.
kind of helped. However, when it came to the second part, I did need help because by the time I was burnt out with running around with the municipality, running around with civil defense, and again, my takeaway from that is that the people over there are willing to help you. However, to get to the right person is a process.
Right.
And when you're a new business owner, you don't really know all
You
the
don't
people.
know. So
and
you have to literally...
absolutely. So now I have everyone's contact. I think now I've bothered them quite enough, with the whole process. So I think it's that systemic process which is missing in terms of, I think if you had to set up the clinic, this is what you need to do, A, B, C, D. You require X number of consultants to help you with this process. That helps because when you hire the MEP contractor to help you set up the facility, the MEP contractor tells you what you need to know, but you don't know the intricate details behind it. So, for example, we reached a point when we realized that the consultant who was doing a part of the work wasn't municipality approved to do the second part of the work. So he was subcontracting and outsourcing his duties to somebody else. And so until we knew that that person wasn't paid, because we weren't going to pay the guy who was getting the whole process delayed. So we said, you finish your job, you get paid. But he wasn't able to get the job done because he hadn't paid the next person. Now, when we got to know that that person required the money, the whole thing worked through.
Yeah.
So I think it's lack of communication, lack of clarity. There is no transparency. I can go on.
You could set up a consultancy.
I could.
Wow. Okay. So it took a year to literally set your practice up. So what are you doing within that year in regards to, how, as a business owner, that must be quite hard to fathom and to, must be quite frustrating. So were you working on the side or what? How were you?
So I was in a private practice in another clinic.
Okay.
For I think almost half the period while we were still, so I was parallelly managing two different roles. I had a private clinic in the evening, building my practice over there. At the same time, building the team, so putting the people together who would, when we started operations. So we had to kind of get all of that organized. You would only get your facility license if you have all the people who need to come on board also licensed.
Oh, wow. How?
So, which means you need to have a psychiatrist who's licensed, you need to have your psychologist who's licensed, you need to have your nurse practitioner. So
this sounds like the chicken and the egg. Which comes first? So,
and that's the challenge, right? Because you can't get your facility operational until you have the resources. And to get the resources, you have to start the process where
absolutely.
you're because again, because they are specialists, they have to be licensed. The licensing process is not that easy.
Yeah.
Because they have to get all their educational documents verified from a third-party outsourced provider, which means that's not controlled directly by the Ministry of Public Health. That's again another outsourced agent. And you have to work with them. So now we have point of contact there as well to kind of say, okay, every time somebody applies, I send a message to say, okay, here's the number, need to follow up. you need to follow up, and you have to kind of go through the process, because delays happen depending on where you're hiring your practitioner from.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Where did you find these people? Were they local, or did you bring them in?
Quite a few of our clinical psychologists, our counselors, our therapists is local. The psychiatrists we have to hire from outside. Again, costing becomes a challenge when you're bringing in trained, licensed, experienced practitioners. You have to remunerate them well.
Yes.
And that can be a challenge for a startup who has been waiting for a year and a half and paying rent for quite a few.
Wow.
For quite a bit. We paid rent for, I think, almost 6 to 8 months. So we were putting more money into
There's been a lot of investment.
Absolutely.
So I take it we're not hitting any profit margin at the moment.
Not yet. Hopefully soon. Fingers crossed.
And
hopefully soon.
I'm just curious, with your type of business, because it is a business, although you are helping people, but you are business at the end of the day. When you're dealing with patients, it's their welfare that you're looking after. But at the same time, as a business owner, you're thinking about, paying the rent, paying the salaries, etc. Maybe this is unethical, but is there some point where you go, well, he doesn't need any more treatment, but I need to pay the rent?
Yeah.
How do you?
Yeah.
How do you?
I would say, for me as a practitioner, and for us as a business, and for all of us practitioners, client welfare is primary.
Yeah.
Nothing beats that.
Yeah.
So if I have, and we're all our practitioners are very ethical in their practice. If they feel there is a client whose requirements are out of their scope, we're very clear in telling the client that that's out of our scope. We do not work with clients if it's not within our scope. So the same applies. If we think a client is not benefiting from therapy or does not require therapy anymore, then we do need to tell that. That is our ethical responsibility. Yeah. I think for the practitioners, they don't really have to worry about it from the business point of view. Their focus is very much client focused.
No, that's
so that just comes with me wearing my hat and saying definitely not. I think for me, moving from being a practitioner to being an entrepreneur has been challenging because my mindset is more of the helping side. Mm. So when I was in my individual private practice, I had a lot of clients on sliding scale.
Right.
Because for me, it was like, if they can't afford to pay, that's already a challenge.
Yeah.
They're struggling with their mental health.
Yeah.
How can you not provide them a service? So I had quite a few of my clients on sliding scale. And when they came back in over here, we had to have a little bit of a discussion to readjust and, kind of balance
so how do you,
out.
How have you been able to balance that out?
Well, I look at it largely in terms of, the needs, the intensity, and how long are they going to be my clients, right? So when I'm working, I largely work with clients with complex trauma, which means they're quite often with me for a longer period of time, which means it makes more sense for me to also kind of balance out a little bit for them and factor that in. So I kind of work it out from that point of view.
Yeah.
So a bit of consideration over there. But, within the clinic as well, if a client is coming in for more number of sessions, we factor those bits to see how best can we then support. Yeah.
Wow. Fascinating. Okay. So how did this journey start for you?
Well, I've been in Qatar since 2009. I worked 10 years for the national carrier, for the airline.
Okay.
I set up the psychology department over there. And during my stint with Qatar Airways, I was still someone who would volunteer with the community. I did a lot of workshops, a lot of awareness, just as a volunteer. And I think that gave me an insight into the needs within the community. I would quite often receive calls asking if I could see clients privately. However, our licensing in Qatar, your license belongs to the employer that you work for, and your license is not your license, unlike in the rest of the world.
So I just want to stop you. So the employer hired you as a
psychologist within the
in-house psychologist.
That's right. Yeah.
Is that normal within the region? Is that quite a common thing, or?
It is. So I would say that the Middle East region is, in a way, has that luxury of hiring an in-house team of psychologists.
Really?
So Qatar Airways has a team, Emirates has a team, Etihad, I think, I'm not currently sure what it's like, but they did have a team of psychologists, either outsourced or working closely with the airline.
Is it generally airlines that have that, or is it just big companies?
So I would say in Qatar, probably just the airline. I think Qatar Airways is the only organization that has a clinical psychology team. Now, psychologists work in different areas of practice. So you would have the corporate organizational psychologist, and for example, Shell Qatar has an organizational psychologist work more from performance-based perspective.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So other organizations as well might have psychology trained background. People might not be clinical psychologists.
Right.
So when you talk about clinical team, that's a rarity. So I think...
So can you just explain what a clinical psychologist, what do you focus on?
Perfect. So a clinical psychologist works with those dealing with mental health challenges and could help make a diagnosis of a mental health condition. So for example, if someone's dealing with depression, someone's dealing with anxiety, someone's dealing with stress, grief, or any other mental health challenges which are more severe or more intense, the clinical psychologist works with the patient one-to-one, might also have group therapy sessions. For example, within our clinic at Flourishing Minds, we have an art therapy group for anxiety. So here you have the practitioner working with a group of people, helping them learn techniques and strategies to help them reduce and better deal with anxiety. So the clinical psychologist is largely around mental health disorders, mental health issues. But there is a preventive role as well, which is where you'd find a lot of clinical psychologists creating, workshops, organizing talks and seminars, because as part of our work, it's not just about treating, it's also about prevention. Yeah.
I'm just curious, when you were working for the airline, how, for me, if I was suffering in any way, would I not hold myself back from coming to you, because then it might not look good to my employer if they found out that I was suffering in any way in a mental capacity? Is it not detrimental?
Well, that's a common concern that all organizations have. And what we do know is when you talk to staff and organizations as well, the main challenge is that what's that going to be like for me? What's the implication? What's the consequence, right? So within an airline setting, there are certain regulatory guidelines that you would follow, and it's about educating the staff in terms of what are those guidelines, right? The airline as an organization is very employee focused and centric, so you do want to support your staff and be able to return them back to work. So which is why within the organization, it's not just the psychology department independently functioning. You also have occupational health, you also have aviation health, you have primary care. So it's very much an integrated approach to make sure that the employee is taken care of and protected. So within the airline setting, like for example, British Airways as well, they do have an EAP program, for example, where employees would be able to call in to a confidential helpline where there is support, etc. Now, we tried to manage that in-house by creating awareness, making sure that we were accessible.
Right.
So there were some challenges in, reaching out and making sure that we were known and accessible. But I guess once they meet you and they know that, okay, you can be trusted, you're actually there to help them, then it becomes an easier process.
And I'm just curious, jumping back to your company, what it is, how do people find you in regards to, is it through referral, or is there much mental awareness here in the region?
I think there's a lot more mental health awareness now than there was when I first moved to Qatar. 2015, 2018, the Qatar government has also run a Qatar attitudes and mental health survey. And what they have seen is there is more awareness. People are more open to talking about it. And that's exactly what we see. The national population is a smaller population compared to the expats, but a lot of the clients that we see at our clinic are nationals.
Oh, right.
So that just shows that, people are more open to talking. And I think COVID kind of pushed us forward to say, hey, we need to think about our mental health now. And I think that was just, I would say, the factor that pushed mental health a bit more to the forefront, which I think has been positive from that point of view.
Is that the journey that we're going on with regards to Flourishing Minds? Was that kind of your make or break time?
In terms of your main COVID, yeah, that's a different story, isn't it? So going back to, I think we were talking about, how did that journey come from?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just jumping a few.
Yeah. So while I was there within the airline, I would always get asked, can I see the staff? And I would say, can I see people privately? And I would say, no, I can't. But during the process of working within the airline, I also built networks outside, whether because within the psychology team, we didn't have a psychiatrist, and sometimes you do require to refer a client for medication because it's not one without the other. It's really about working together. And so in that process, again, you'd hear feedback from the community members. Okay, this person worked well, did work well, we struggled here, we struggled there. So I kind of realized that there was a need and a demand within the market. Also, given I believe that I have this unique set of clinical and corporate, which you don't always find with clinical psychologists. So I was able to kind of also identify that within the workplaces, what are some of the challenges? So I started focusing on, it's not just, okay, Qatar Airways is unique. We have the opportunity of having an in-house team, but the rest of the organizations, they still have employees, they still have struggles, they still have challenges. So there's a huge market out there.
Yeah.
So I think that was one of the key reasons where I said, okay, I've done my bit with Qatar Airways. I've left the legacy that I wanted to leave behind. And I said it was time for me to move on and do more work for Qatar as a country. My husband, born and raised in Qatar, so, has connections and roots in Qatar. So we kind of felt that it was a good place to kind of, set roots, support the community and expand from there. But I left, unfortunately, Qatar Airways right at the time when COVID started. So I left Qatar Airways. I was going to have my second baby, had my baby, COVID hit. And so the next 2 years was a very different story from what I thought and anticipated and planned for. So yeah, it was a challenge in itself. But then that's how I moved into private practice.
Actually, I just want to stop you there. How do you look after your mental health?
Very good question.
Well, that just popped into my mind. That's a lot going on, and you're stopping your job, having a second baby. That's a lot to handle. So how do you?
I think I must say, I couldn't have done any of this without my husband.
Oh, bless
him. So he's the rock. Yeah,
good shout out to the husband.
Absolutely, he's the strong factor, the motivator, the person who listens to me. I get to vent. So absolutely, I don't think I would have been able to do that without him, for sure. I also go to having my own personal counseling and therapy and supervision as well.
Okay.
So I think that's also an important part as a psychologist, because you're working through and you really need to process what you're dealing with as well. So during that period, I made sure that I had my check-ins and my supervision and all of those bits as well. On a daily basis, I have my 2 dogs, so I think they serve as, therapy material.
So you get out into nature and walk the dogs, bit of exercise as well.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right, so you leave Qatar Airways, you're having your second baby, COVID hits.
You stay at home. So I was at home during that period, and I said, okay, what do I do now? You can't obviously set up the business. And I was also looking at consulting. So again, overachiever. So wanted to set up the clinic, wanted to have the consultants, wanted to work with organizations, wanted to work with people, wanted to do it all.
And had you always worked for an organization before that? Was this kind of new for you in regards to going it alone?
In terms of setting up?
Well, just the entrepreneurial mindset.
Definitely. First time of getting into it, yeah. So previously, I did my private practice back in India. That was a very small setup, so you didn't really have to think much about it. But I think over here it was very different. Also, just trying to understand as an expat, what can you do? What's possible? What can you, how, which is 100% yours. And so I explored with QFC to see how we could set up, a consulting practice so that while we kind of figured out what was going to happen from the clinic side, I could still kind of set up. Got the approval under QFC, so Flourishing Minds was kind of conceptualized over there. But then because as a consultancy, however, again, due to COVID, we started really thinking, is that the right time to really commit to it? Businesses weren't really reaching out. We were dealing with very different challenges at the point of time. And, there was a lot of, employees being laid off. And so it was a very different atmosphere. And my husband and I, we spoke about it and we said, I don't think this is the right time for us to get into it. So continued doing volunteer work. I got involved with the American Psychological Association at that point of time. We did a lot of support groups online to support other psychologists dealing with burnout and compassion fatigue during period of COVID.
Yeah.
So we ran international support groups, had a support group running back in India. So I was all over.
Yeah, because that must have been, COVID was
it's a hard time.
A very hard time when it comes to mental health.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I kept myself occupied. I'm someone, as long as I'm doing something that I feel really passionate about, I think my mental health is taken care of right there.
So
that's a key part.
So you have to keep busy. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you're not? Do you get like itchy feet, itchy hands, or
if I'm not busy, then I am with the dogs, I'm with the family.
Oh, okay, so you do find ways.
I can find ways to utilize my energy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, all right, I'm just curious, with the Flourishing Minds, when it comes to mental health, how does anyone really know the percentage of their mental health when it comes to, am I thinking normal? Am I thinking crazy thoughts? Am I behaving? How do they end up coming through your door? Because most of us try and live life the best way we can. We don't know whether we're doing it right or whether we're doing it wrong. What makes them turn up at Flourishing Minds? What is it is there a trigger, or is it because someone has said something? What?
Okay, so I'll go a little bit and start earlier than that to say that, when you talk about mental health, we quite often think about mental health as a disorder.
Yes.
But mental health, we all have mental health, right?
Go into that a little bit more then.
So when we talk about mental health, we all have health. Mm-hmm. And our mind, the body is very much connected. So if you have physical health, you have mental health, right? But so I'd invite you to think about mental health as, it's on a continuum for dual axis. On one, it's the illness, and on the other one is the wellness. So you can really have somebody who's dealing with, let's say, some mental health challenges, but their wellness factor is really good, which means they're taking care of their physical health, their sleep, appetite, movement, exercise. So the well-being aspect is better. They would still be functional, right? So for example, if let's say I'm dealing with a loss in the family, or I have a family member who is ill and upset, I'm going to feel a bit low. I'm going to feel a bit down. I might lose, some sleep over it, and there could be some change in my appetite, and I might not be doing really well. But I could then maybe talk to somebody else, or talk to friends, talk to family members. I have a support group, and I'm still functional.
Yeah.
So, and then if that continues, and I'm in that state of multiple stresses, now I'm not doing so well. And then now the likelihood is that my wellness factor can start dipping if I'm not taking care of myself.
Yeah.
And then that's when you probably move down that continuum from mental health to mental ill health, right? Now, when you're talking about when do you come in to see somebody, when do you come in to see and talk to the expert, I would say looking at what are the symptoms, what are you facing, how long have you been dealing with it? So if I've not been sleeping for a day, that's different from not sleeping for more than 2 weeks and not sleeping for a month, right? So really looking at the intensity, the duration, the frequency, and how is that impacting my functioning? So if I'm not able to get up and I'm not able to go to work and I'm isolating and I'm different from how I normally feel and behave, now I need to check back and see, okay, what's going on? And I would say that's the key criteria.
And that's the trigger for people to seek.
That's quite often because, we always, I kind of use the analogy of the hamster in the wheel. We're quite often very good at keeping ourselves busy, and we're all the time busy. And we sometimes say, but I'm doing all of this, but I still don't feel good. Right now it's about stopping and thinking and pausing and saying, okay, well, what's going on? Why? And what's happening? And what are the factors? And what's contributing? Because mental health is not just one single factor. There are biological factors, there are psychological factors, social factors, environmental factors, intergenerational factors, cultural elements. There are so many different factors that contribute to us maintaining or not being able to maintain our mental health. So it's really about looking at it from a holistic point of view. So how do clients come into us? Word of mouth. Our largest new clients coming in is word of mouth. So our clients referring other people to come to see us, which is great.
Which is great.
Absolutely. I think that's a key factor for us to, validate and recognize that, the team is doing a great job in providing mental health care and support to those who are coming in to see us, which is why they're referring people come in. We have a very good network with other clinics that have psychiatrists or have allied services that could integrate back in. For example, gynecology clinics, fertility clinics, orthopedic clinics. Now, mental health is integrated with all of these areas, so we'd have referral pathways coming in from there. Also, as I mentioned earlier, we work very closely with schools, with universities. So within universities, we're trying to build a collaboration in which if there is a student that requires any academic adjustments because of maybe ADHD or because of learning-related challenges, then they're able to come in for an assessment that can provide them required academic adjustment guidelines that could support them in their education as well. So it's really about working, closely within organizations and communities. We also work with organizations. So, we run psychoeducational sessions with them. So building awareness, and that also helps create referral pathways as well for us. So
I'm just curious. So if I felt that I wasn't feeling right, that something wasn't right, as you say, my sleep pattern was off, or my normal day-to-day on the wheel type thing, and I came to you guys, what is the process? How do you kind of help that person? How do you, I suppose you're like a detective in trying to find how this person, do you look at how he or she operated normally, or is it?
Right. Okay. Well, very interesting question.
Well, I'm curious because I've never gone down that road, so I'm just curious.
So when we have a client come in for the first time, we have what we call an intake consultation. So an intake consultation is a 90-minute session where we go through understanding what is the client currently dealing with, what are some of the challenges right now, when did it start, what were some of the triggers, how is it impacting functioning. We take a detailed history about their medical history, so understanding their physical health factors, understanding any past mental health challenges, understanding family-related health and mental health challenges, understanding their use of substances, be it caffeine, be it alcohol, whatever.
Oh, wow.
Understanding their social life, what's social life like, understanding their, if we're dealing with children or teenagers, we definitely look into what that developmental history has been like, academic history, the work history. So understanding all of those factors. So it's kind of like a summary of the client's entire life in that 90 minutes. We also our practitioners are trauma informed. So we very much look into any stresses that they've dealt with, any losses, any impact from significant events that they've experienced in life. So we factor all of that in to conceptualize what's happening with the client.
Wow. Do you have like set questions that you go through? Because that sounds a lot.
So there is a framework that we
Okay.
follow, very much, like I said, a biopsychosocial approach to gathering all that information. So as part of our clinical training, we go through this. So, we learn how to gather all that information within that time framework.
And how does all these new, like ADHD and other, what do you call diagnosis affect? Are they kind of highlights that you go, oh, okay, so, especially if someone doesn't know that they suffer from ADHD or anything like that?
Right. So based on the symptoms that they present, based on the questions that we ask and the information that we gather, the psychologist or the clinical psychologist has an understanding of what symptom clusters, what are the diagnoses that are coming as part of that. So for example, if somebody comes in who's never been diagnosed with ADHD, but the symptoms that they're talking about very much indicative, then the psychologist will further explore down that line, right? So then we have screeners that we might run, so questionnaires that we would ask the client to maybe complete. If it's ADHD, it's very important to understand as a child, what was it like? We'd get more background information. If it's, again, a student currently, then we'd get information from the parents, information from the school. So again, we have a complete process around how we arrive at the diagnosis. So it's not just a one consultation and bam, that's it. Here's your diagnosis and a label put forward. We're very clear that, the objective is not about arriving at a diagnosis or having a label. The diagnosis is just an indicator of what the key factor is, but it's really about what do we do then with that? What are the symptoms? What are your goals? How can we help you to navigate or to work through the challenges and the barriers that you're facing, right? So that's the key focus, right? The diagnosis just allows us to understand the area of focus, right? And sometimes, again, the diagnosis becomes important because it guides the treatment approach and the treatment plan. So for example, if someone has complex trauma, then the interventions are more trauma-focused interventions. If someone's dealing with anxiety, we might use more present-focused or solution-focused approaches, or cognitive behavior therapy, which is basically exploring and understanding how our thoughts impact our emotions, impact our behavior, and so working on how could you challenge those negative thoughts, how can you regulate your emotions, how could you work through that. So understanding the core challenge or the core mental health issue helps us to guide the treatment plan and approach.
Wow. So if I, wasn't really in tune with my mental health, but I knew I was struggling to go to sleep, it must be an eye-opener for clients sometimes that they come to you for the goal of, I just want to improve my sleep pattern, but then I could be opening a Pandora's box of everything else that could be affecting me. You must see a lot of transformation.
Absolutely.
When they first come in to when they actually leave, and no wonder they're your referral, because you've just literally opened up their life.
Yep. Absolutely. I had a client recently who came in and said, oh, wow, this is the first time someone's explained this to me in a way that makes sense to me, right? And I think that's the key part. We're very keen on involving the client in the whole process. It's not about me sitting as an expert and say, oh, this is what you're dealing with. No, it's about me trying to understand and reflecting back and say, okay, here's what I noticed. I'm curious about this. What do you think? And really working with the client to make sense, because it's about the client making sense and feeling that, oh, right, now I get what's happening, and now I get why I'm responding this way, and now I get why this is triggering for me and how this kind of developed. And when you're able to understand yourself, it is a different feeling. It's kind of like taking a weight off your shoulders.
Absolutely. But it must be strange for people that haven't gone through that experience to, do you get a lot of people that are expecting you just to write out a prescription or something like that to say, look, this is the issue, this is your problem, go away, and
Right. So again, I think most of the clients coming in are more aware that there is a difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist.
Okay.
And that the psychologist is not going to prescribe anything, at least not in Qatar. In some parts of the US, you do have prescribing rights, and then you have a separate training, etc. So over here, we don't.
Yeah.
So we're very clear. So when clients call in, our reception staff are also trained, and our nurses trained to take in information that can inform and help us to say, okay, this is probably a therapist who will work better for you.
Yeah.
So we kind of triage in a way to say, okay, here's where you need to go. And if we think that there would be more than one therapist that might be involved in the case, again, we explain to the client to say that, this part would be done by person A. And when there is a need to explore into this area, then person B would also get involved. So we're very much integrated as part of that whole process and approach. So when clients come in, we educate them. We tell them what the process is going to look like. And we also tell them that if we think that there is a need for medication, we'll guide you through the process. And the same works from the psychiatrist coming in as well. We're not focused on the fact that everybody who comes in to see the psychiatrist has to get medication. No, It's really about understanding what's really required and where medication is required. So very much client-focused, evidence-based, and, working with the client as part of that process.
I'm just curious, because mental health is... we were doing the Flourishing Mind event last month, was it? Last month?
Totally.
And, I made the point that if we were talking about AI, then the whole place would be packed. But when we're talking about mental health, which affects everyone, we didn't get that large crowd size that you would expect from AI. Why is it taking so long when this is what runs everything? This is what runs everyone, is what goes on in here. But why is it taking so long to get to that point of this is a computer and this is the hardware, but no one's been looking at the software that's actually running the hardware.
Right, because I think traditionally we've looked at, mental health as people who are not okay, crazy, right? You lock them away and you don't deal with them.
Yeah.
So there's so much of stigma that is still associated with it, because how am I going to be viewed by others, right? And I think that was one of the reasons why we also named it as Flourishing Minds Festival, because when you talk about mental health, you don't really think about festival. You have festivals for almost everything else, right?
No, very true.
But mental health, it's like, you just go to the doctor, you don't really, no one knows where you're going, and, you really need to manage it in a more confidential way that no one sees you, no one hears you. So we really want to kind of open that up. And you're absolutely right. We don't always reach. And it was surprising for me that, in a very short span of time, because we had challenges in getting the event up and running, which is a different story. That's another story, different podcast. But in a very short span of time, we had over 200 people register for each day.
Wow.
But they didn't come in. So now I'm not sure what happened. Not all of them came in.
Maybe there should have been a follow-up, like a mental health follow-up to, what was going on.
Probably. And I also think also at that point of time, we also had the whole crisis happening around the globe.
Yeah.
I think the last 2 days was also stressful and challenging for a lot of people. So I'm assuming that's also another contributing factor, probably, where we saw a little dip in the audience. However, we were still able to reach over 100 people across the 4 days, which I think is great, because I would say even if we're able to reach one person.
I was going to say, that's what I talk about this podcast. Even if I can just reach one person, I've done my job.
One step at a time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so very much. I'm glad that we were able to kind of run that. And again, amazing support from the team that we could actually pull it off. Also, we were able to reach around 80 cyclists as part of the Ride for Mental Health in Al-Takira.
Oh,
so again, I think overall, over 100 people, so which I think is great.
But back to my question in regards to why is it taking so long with regards to mental health?
I think it's the stigma.
Yeah.
The stigma, the lack of awareness, the uncertainty of what is going to happen to me, how are people going to view me. I think that kind of holds people back quite a bit.
But are we learning more about how this works as well with technology and, actually viewing how it all works? Is it making us more aware?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot more awareness around it. I think people are opening up a bit more. People are more open to exploring it. I think it's also about how we frame it, right? Because again, if we had to call it wellness, would I have more people come in? So I think it's also the language that is used, the association with mental health and what that means. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done to break the stigma and to create awareness and to say that it's okay to talk about mental health.
Do you think social media has helped as well with people being much more open?
I think yes and no.
Okay.
Because yes, in terms of, there is more information out there, but it's also about being able to understand how much of that information is accurate, because sometimes you're bombarded with information.
Absolutely.
And everything is explained in a very simplistic way, which is great, but sometimes it's oversimplified as well. So I think it's really about striking a balance and recognizing that social media is out there, but you really need to look at the right source. You need to make sure that, the information is accurate. So you really need to also kind of factor that in.
No, but I mean with people being much more open with their mental health.
Absolutely.
Is that helping?
I think that's definitely
people talking about it?
Definitely, because a lot of people are talking about their journeys and their struggles more openly, right? Be it celebrities, be it sports personal. I think there is there is more openness about it for sure.
Nice. I'm just curious, when you qualify as a psychologist, as a clinical psychologist, do you have to keep on learning? Is it always a process learning, because new information, where do you tap into learning new information?
Right. So as part of maintaining our proficiency, we have to regularly update ourselves as part of continuous professional development.
Right.
When we renew, so our license is valid for 2 years.
Okay.
And every time we renew the license, we have to show that we have gone through X amount of learning. There are certain criteria, you need to have conferences that you've attended, you need to have workshops, you need to have self-learning. So the ministry has a complete guideline that you follow. So over a period of 2 years, you accumulate around 80 CPD points.
Wow.
And when you have to submit that before they approve your renewal of your license. So yeah, very much a part of the process. So in Qatar, there are so for example, HMC, they have CPD events that they run. Wales Connell, they have CPD events that they run. Qatar University has CPD events that
So
they
what
run.
does CBD?
Continuous professional development.
Okay.
So learning events, basically.
Okay.
And you have a lot of organizations as well that, offer. So, for example, the APA, you can be a member of APA and have access to a lot of learning resources, or part of the British Psychological Society. I'm the director for the Qatar chapter for Middle East Psychological Association. And so we're working to create learning opportunities again in Qatar, within the Middle East region as well, making it more culturally sensitive and relevant to practitioners in the region. So yeah, so
Nice.
there's lots of opportunities.
And I'm just curious, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, do you get frustrated sometimes that you can't practice as much as you used to as a psychologist?
Yeah. Well, I am practicing a lot more now
Oh, you are?
than so when I was with.
So does that mean you're just balancing more on either side?
That's why, as I was saying, I need more hands now, because I
Absolutely.
really am playing the balancing act indeed. So while I was with Qatar Airways, during my initial years, I was seeing more of clinical work. As I moved up the ladder, got into management role, I had less clinic days. And so when I moved into the private practice, it was kind of back into clinic. And so right now as well, I have 5 days I'm in the clinic. Sunday is my non-clinical day.
Hence, we're recording today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So I enjoy my clinical practice. And I would say that when I'm with my clients, I'm just there with my client. And the shift and the change that you see when a client leaves each session, I think that makes everything worth the effort, right? Just kind of being able to see that little shift, that little difference. I quite often tell my clients, every small thing that you do it's really about patting your back and saying good job to yourself. And that's a stroke for yourself. You know? And sometimes it's really nice when a client gets up and is ready to leave and say, oh, wait, good job for today, you know. And that's kind of really validating because you really recognize that, you know, what you do matter. And it's important for the clients. And for me, that's very rewarding.
Nice. So where are we heading with regards to, you know, with everything that's happening in the world and with the rate of technology changing? You know, where do you see it going? Are you going to be in so much demand, or are we going to have apps and technology that will be able to help us with mental health? Where are we all heading?
Well, I'm sure there will be apps and technology like there already is, but I think that you can't take off the human element. The human element is always going to be there, right? I look at technology as a supportive addition to the work that we are doing. For example, virtual reality can be quite helpful in treatment for anxiety, for social anxiety. Now, I can't always simulate a situation where I have a lot of people sitting around the room in order to expose my client and desensitize and work through navigating anxiety. Virtual reality is quite a helpful opportunity there, right? So I think technology is supportive devices. We need to understand ethical practices. We need to make sure that we're following guidelines and processes in place to make sure that we're taking care of a client. And how we apply the technology, I think that's an area where we still need more research to understand implications, consequences, how is it going to work, etc. But I think definitely if we have to make mental health accessible, we need to have more resources. Because at this point of time, we have more people dealing with mental health challenges, but not enough mental health practitioners. And this is a global challenge. It's not just in Qatar. So we really need to think differently. We need to be able to remunerate practitioners differently. We need to have more practitioners, because you can't expect a practitioner to see 7 clients per day across 6 days a week.
Well,
because you also need time for admin and paperwork and preparation. So the number of clients a practitioner can see is also only that much. But people still have needs and resources. So it's really about, reaching out and creating access points. And I think, having access to, and I think that's where, so if you talk about, the future, I think there is a technology aspect, and I think there's a community-driven aspect as well. So really being able to reach out to the community and doing preventive work, right? So education, for example, you as a community member could learn how to provide support if someone comes in by just listening to that person and then directing the person to the right source, right? Not everybody, because we talked about mental health being on a continuum, so not everybody needs to come in to see the psychologist. But you could have different access points, and when you really need to escalate, you can come in. But we still need access points, which means we need the community to be involved, which means we need people trained to support the community and community needs. So I think the way I see it is that there is technology, and it's reaching out to the masses and engaging with them.
Nice. The power of listening. But also, while you were talking, I was listening to a podcast about AI and, the ethics around AI and stuff. Maybe, there will be a point where, AI can work with psychologists to actually be that technology that listens, and with it, whatever feedback it's given, it can guide around mental health.
I'm not so sure about that part.
Okay,
I think that's a tricky part, and I think there's a lot more that would need to go into it because, because a human being is so composed of emotions and, thoughts, and there's so much of aspects to it. So I think, maybe there's a supportive part over there. But I think that's an area that needs a lot more research. As you're talking, I'm a very visual person, so I'm just kind of thinking of, an AI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that point, we've come to the end. Thank you, Tina. It's been superb. It's been an eye-opener. It's been, I'm glad we had this conversation.
Thank you, Stefan.
And I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
And keep us up to date with any developments or any expansions, or when you expand around the world. We'd love to hear it. But yeah, thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you.
It wasn't as bad as you thought, was it?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch up with you next week. Take care. Bye-bye. Hey, amazing people. This concludes our journey on the Head Guide podcast, your ultimate fusion of Middle East vibes and success in both business and life. I'm Stefan Lindberg-Jones, your ever-enthusiastic guide through all things awesome. The Head Guide podcast is your exclusive pass to CEO insights, cultural adventures, and the genuine lowdown on life in the Middle East. If you've enjoyed the ride, hit that subscribe button for the most fantastic ongoing adventure. Stay tuned for more awesomeness, more insights, and more success coming your way. Let's roll into the future of the Middle East journey together.